Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Speaking of the Revenge Tour, let's talk a little bit about college basketball because it was a weirdly busy weekend, but a weirdly quiet weekend as well. And really, we're kind of at that time right now where there's not going to be a ton in college hoops here over the next 4, 5, 6 days. There wasn't much the last 4, 5, 6 days, right? We have finals in certain schools. Schools are taking time to pause for Christmas time. Schools on top of that, now we have COVID issues. And so we had what looked like a really big schedule this weekend. And then when you really boil it down, not all that much of note happened. There was one really big story, though, and it came from America's best city, my favorite city, Las Vegas. Unfortunately, Ohio State could not show up because of COVID. Unfortunately, UCLA could not show up because of COVID. Some would argue North Carolina didn't really show up, not because of COVID, because they stunk. But Kentucky played North Carolina and was ultimately the only game of the CBS Sports Classic. And Kentucky put on a butt whooping. Final score 98-67. Kentucky, they're back. Okay, they're definitely not back. But what I will say is this. This was the biggest win, the most impressive win for Kentucky since the season finale of 2020 when they clinched an SEC title at Florida without Ashton Haig as their starting point guard. Great day to be a Kentucky Wildcat, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come. And what I want to do before we get into Saturday's game, let's just go back a week ago when Kentucky lost at Notre Dame. And if you remember, and let me say as I always do, I get a lot of stuff wrong. We do a segment called Where Aaron Was Right, Where Aaron Was Wrong every week to highlight all of the dumb things I say on this show over the course of any given week. But what did I tell you a week ago about Kentucky after they lost to Notre Dame? I had so many of you tweeting at me, DMing me, private, public, whatever. And so many of you asked me, Torres, our offense, we stink. This, that, we can't shoot. It's the same as last year. And I said, look, I wouldn't be happy if I was a Kentucky fan. I understand your frustration. But to me, I did not see a team that was on the brink of another 9-15 losing season when they played at Notre Dame. I saw a team that went on the road for their first true road game. And what I saw and what I talked about on this show, I said, look, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying I'd be happy with Calipari if I was you. I'm not saying the rotations are figured out. But what I said after that Notre Dame game was this. I said the biggest concern that I saw was that I saw a team that looked a step slow, and that was a byproduct of playing nobody for 5 weeks. And I said, give it another week or two. If Kentucky looks like this against Ohio State, who they were supposed to play in the CBS Sports Classic, if they look like this against Louisville, if they look like this at the start of SEC play, then it really is time to be concerned, and it really is time to wonder what the future of this program is under John Calipari. Instead, Kentucky regrouped and, as I said, put together the best performance that they have in a year and a half. And as I watched that game, one thing stood out. What stood out was the team that I talked about all offseason on this show showed up, and it finally looked like the team that John Calipari put together in this offseason. If you remember, Kentucky, disaster last season, everything falls apart, and what does John Calipari do? Day after the season, 2 days after the season, whatever, I believe it was Monday after being eliminated from the SEC tournament, so essentially the day after the NCAA tournament bracket was revealed, John Calipari came out and said, look, you better get us now, because if you didn't get us this year, we're coming. We're going to be ready for next year. And I spent an abnormal amount of time during the offseason talking about Kentucky because there was like a 6-week stretch where every single week something big happened. First, they brought in Orlando Antigua and Chin Coleman. Revenge Tour. Get the T-shirts. Then after that, they get, and I don't remember the exact order of how everybody committed, but C.J. Frederick, transfer from Iowa. Severe Wheeler, transfer from Georgia. Ty Washington, 5-star, top 15 recruit. You then, on top of that, you got Kellen Grady early in the spring. And so you started to see the pieces of what looked like more of a modern type college basketball and basketball team in general that wasn't going to have two low post guys that don't know what they're doing, that can't shoot, that can't handle, that are stiffs down low. No disrespect to anybody that was there before. But what you're going to see is more spacing, more three-point shooting, more whatever. And that's exactly what we saw from Kentucky on Saturday. It was, I think, really the best of all worlds where Kentucky just dominated the glass. They were plus 18, out-rebounded North Carolina by 18, but they also had that spacing three-point shooting that you wanted to see. And Saturday was really the day where all of the pieces came together in the way that they need to if you're going to win at the highest level. Not saying they're going to look that good every single night. Not saying this guarantees that they're back. Not saying this guarantees they're the favorite in the SEC going forward. But what we saw is what this team is capable of. First of all, Sahvir Wheeler, starting point guard, was phenomenal. Best game he's played in a Kentucky uniform, bar none. 26 points, 8 assists, 4 steals. He was that catalyst. He was that veteran point guard that this team has lacked for really 2 years now, dating back to the 2020 SEC championship team with Emmanuel Quickley, Tyrese Maxey, and Ashton Hagans. Sahvir Wheeler, I loved what I saw from him because it wasn't just that he scored a bunch of points and the box score looked good, but he brought the energy on offense, he brought the energy on defense, and I thought it was infectious throughout this entire team in a way that Kentucky just has not had a veteran like that step up and take on that leadership burden in a long time. On top of that, the three-point shooting was there, which was important. Kentucky, I talked about it last week, they spent so much time in the offseason trying to recruit three-point shooting, yet somehow through the early part of the season, they were somehow statistically worse three-point shooting than they had been. And in my head, I don't remember if I talked about it, but I said, look, they have too many talented three-point shooters to keep shooting this poorly, and I don't believe that this is something that is sustainable because this isn't like freshmen coming in that have never proved it at the college level. You have a bunch of guys that have done it at the college level. Davion Mintz was one of the best three-point shooters in the SEC last year, and he was struggling. Well, guess what he did on Saturday? Hit a big three, played better than he has in the past. Davion Mintz did well off the bench. I might have said Davion Mitchell. Obviously, I was talking about Davion Mintz if I said Davion Mitchell. On top of that, Kellen Grady finally got going. 5 3-pointers made. Ty Washington made a 3-pointer. Bryce Hopkins made a 3-pointer. And overall, Kentucky finished 8 of 15 from 3. That was the team that we thought we were going to see. That was what the team looked like. On top of that, the rebounding dominance there, which I just talked about in a minute. And you know what the great sign was for Kentucky about Saturday? They really did it without 2 key guys. Oscar Tshiebwe, quote-unquote, they're not quote-unquote their low-post guy, but their low-post star. He's been the bright spot of the early part of the season. Very interesting article by Kyle Tucker, my old buddy who blocked me on Twitter. Kyle Tucker wrote an interesting article for The Athletic the other day, but Oscar Tshiebwe, quote-unquote, only had 16 points and 12 rebounds on Saturday, which sounds like a loaded stat sheet, but he missed a bunch of time with foul trouble, only played 22 minutes, and Ty Washington, that 5-star freshman that I mentioned a minute ago, again struggled in this game, finishing only with 9 points to go along with 4 assists and 2 steals. And so I bring all that up to just say, Kentucky just beat North Carolina by 29 points, with their best low-post player in foul trouble and maybe their most important player in the bigger picture, Ty Washington, struggling. He just struggled because he's not in his groove yet. And so to me, this is nothing but a positive for the University of Kentucky going forward. I think this is a great sign. This is the team that we thought they were going to be. And I think when I look at this game, 2 things jump out. First of all, in the bigger picture, it's just great to get that monkey off your back, right? Because if you're a Kentucky fan, you lose to Duke opening night. Okay, well, Duke might be the best team in the country. Paulo Banchero is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. As I said on last week's show, I thought Kentucky fans were actually kind of rational about how they handled the Duke loss early in the season. Obviously, there were some fans that were really frustrated, but most of them said, look, that team is really good, probably better than most people realized in the preseason, and we're not going to worry. But when you lose at Notre Dame, you start to get those flashbacks to last year. Is it going to be the same? Can we shoot? Is our offense outdated? Well, Saturday proved that the pieces are there. You're not going to beat everybody by 29 points. You're not going to win every game in as dominating fashion. But I do think North Carolina, while they're not playing great right now, we'll talk about them in a minute, while North Carolina hasn't been great, I do still think that is a very good win against an NCAA tournament caliber team. And at the very least, this team is different. It's not the same as last year. It's not going to be the same. We're not going on these crazy losing streaks. We're not going to be incapable of closing out games. We have older guys. We have veteran guys. We have mentally tougher guys. And that is a great sign for Kentucky. I think the other great sign is you are, again, starting to see what this team can look like at its absolute best. You are seeing that this team has real leadership at the point guard position, that you have multiple players that can handle the ball. Severe Wheeler, again, 8 assists. Ty Washington, 4 assists. You have multiple guys that can hit open three-point shots. If you have guys that can hit ultimate three-point shot or hit open three-point shots, that leaves space for a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe to operate down low where he's not getting double and triple teamed in the post because they don't have to worry about three-point shooting. And so to me, that's why I'd be excited today if I was a Kentucky fan, because the bottom line is this. If that team plays to that potential, that's a team that can win the SEC. And I believe the SEC is right up there with the Big East and the Big 12 as two of the best conferences in college basketball. Any order, I don't know who's better than who. But what I'll tell you is you start to look around the SEC, and I thought this weekend, as good as this league is, you started to see some cracks, right? Alabama lost last week to Memphis. We're thinking a week ago Alabama has beaten Gonzaga. They've beaten Houston. Is this again the favorite in the SEC? And they still very well may be. But they're not unbeatable. They lost at Memphis. They struggled with Jacksonville State, and they're coming back down to earth a little bit. LSU still really ultimately hasn't played anybody, although I actually believe they're a very good team. They have a player named Tari Eason, a transfer from Cincinnati, to watch out for on that team, but they haven't played anybody. Auburn played well, beat St. Louis in a game that they easily could have lost on the road. Arkansas struggled. We'll talk about Arkansas in a minute. But the point is, as good as the rest of the teams in the league are, there's nobody that you're sitting there saying, if we play like we did against North Carolina, we have no chance against them. And so to me, I think this is a great sign. I think you have to be happy if you're a Kentucky fan, and I think you got to be really excited about what this means